All right, welcome everybody. My name is Alan Greenlee. I'm the Executive Director here at SCAMPS, and welcome to our first session of our new recurring webinar series in which a SCAMPS developer presents one project as a case study. We're calling this series How We Got It Built, and we hope it not only showcases the hard work of our members, but also demystifies the affordable housing development process. The first project we're highlighting is Mini Mansions Ormond Beach Villas in Ventura County. This development received an award last year in SCAMPS Home Within Reach Awards for the Beyond LA category. Our presenters will delve into key details of what it actually took to get this project done and what they learned along the way and the challenges they had to overcome. Today's Mini Mansions panelists include SCAMP board member Alexander Russell, Executive Vice President for Real Estate Development, Derek Wada, Associate Director of Real Estate Development, and Luis Hernandez, the Project Manager. You'll notice there that we've included a poll, so folks can just, if you could take a minute and fill out the poll just so the Mini Mansions folks know who's in the audience. That'd be really, really helpful. And then we're going to go through the presentation by Mini Mansions, and then we'll do questions and answers at the end. So if you utilize the Q&A box down at the bottom of the screen, that'd be terrific. And with that, I think my job is over. I'm going to hand it over to Derek Wada. Derek, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen, for the introduction. And thank you, SCAMP, for inviting us to speak at today's How We Got It Built webinar. We are excited to share our experiences, the challenges, the obstacles that we faced when developing at Ormond or developing Ormond Beach Villas. From lease-up challenges to tax reform to submitting a VIP application in a matter of weeks. These are just a couple snapshots of the challenges and the obstacles that we faced. And throughout today's webinar, we will be going into more detail on these and other obstacles that we faced here at Ormond Beach Villas. So Olivia, next slide, please. So high level, Ormond Beach Villas is Ventura County's first and currently only permanent housing for veterans, and is approximately 1.5 miles away from the naval base. It provides housing opportunities to a variety of veteran populations, from veterans and their families, to homeless veterans with a disability, to chronically homeless veterans. Ormond Beach Villas is comprised of 40 units, 1, 2s, and 3-bedroom unit types, ranging from 30%, 50%, and 60% AMIs. But what makes this project so successful are the partnerships we have here. We couldn't have done this without LA Family Housing and Henry Casillas, a for-profit builder who is rooted in the city of Oxnard. And we even ventured new partnerships on Ormond Beach Villas. For the first time ever, we partnered with the Boys and Girls Club, with the local Boys and Girls Club, to provide the ongoing children's service programs. What's also unique about Ormond Beach Villas is we've partnered with John Stewart Company. Mainly, John Stewart Company is the supervisorial agent, mainly needed for our VIP application, while Mini Mansions provides the day-to-day property management services. Next slide, please. So community engagement, something I'm sure we're all familiar with, and something I'm sure we've all done to a certain capacity. And Ormond Beach was no different. And for several years, we have met on an ongoing basis with the local community, with the local veterans community, to ensure that we built a development that meets the needs of our local veterans. An example of this is the Veteran Collaborative of Ventura County. In this instance, we've met with them on several occasions. They provided design feedback as we were going through that process. They provided general support. But most importantly, when we had our challenges during lease up, they provided marketing opportunities, they provided referrals. And so I really could not stress enough the importance of meeting on an ongoing basis, meeting with the local community and establishing those relationships early on and on an ongoing basis. So with that, I'd like to introduce Alexander Russell, our Executive Vice President, and he will be taking us through the development and approval process and the challenges and the obstacles that we faced here.
Good morning, everyone. Hi. Thanks, Derek. So site selection is such a critical component of the development process. This particular property was located in an affordable housing overlay, which gave us confidence that the city supported affordable housing on this site. However, the site was fully entitled for sale condos when we purchased it. Obviously buying an entitled site saves a lot of money, time, and reduced risk. For example, we did not need to spend the 12+ months necessary to get the design and environmental clearances approved. And it also eliminated the public approval risk and pre-development cash outlay that is typical in affordable housing development. It also mitigated some potential environmental lawsuits and possible neighborhood opposition issues. This made the property very attractive. That being said, buying a for sale entitled site also caused challenges because the original design did not meet the resident needs, building codes, or funding requirements. For example, the site was all very large 2- and 3-bedroom units, which is not ideal for housing homeless households, which was our target population, nor did it match our waiting list's greatest need, which is primarily 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. As such, we changed the unit mix to 15 one-bedrooms. We kept the original 22 bedrooms, and then we also kept 5 of the original 23-bedroom units. This took some creativity, but also more closely matched the need and allowed us to stay within the general design and building footprint. This is important because it allowed us to do an over-the-counter minor modification versus going back to Planning Commission or City Council for additional design approvals. Another challenge was that having ground floor garages made the units inaccessible for people with disabilities. So we added some ground floor units by converting some of the 2-car garages into 1-car garages and added some parallel surface parking along the main drive aisle to make up the difference. Although we did seek a parking concession for a few spaces based on density bonus law that we actually submitted as part of our minor mod. There are also minimal amenities. Again, this is a for sale property, so there was a barbecue and a tot lot, but there was no management office, there was no services offices, nor community space for on-site services. Thus, we turned the garages in the middle of the central building, which is, as you'll see later in the design, most centrally located, into community space and other important amenities for our residents. Like I said, we accomplished all of this through a ministerial over-the-counter minor modification, which was great. It was much quicker, less expensive, and less risky. However, as you'll see later, we utilized local funds. So ultimately, the project did go back before City Council. Next slide. So the property was previously a vacant former junkyard that was frequently used for dumping. People had excess soil or mattresses or things of that nature were frequently dumped on this property. As you can see in the pictures, we helped turn this vacant, oftentimes blighted property into a community asset, a beautiful community asset. And that's what part of makes affordable housing so beneficial to our communities. As Derek mentioned, there are 40 units that provide 18 homes for homeless and disabled veterans, and 21 homes for low and very low income families with a veteran head of household. This is somewhat unique. A lot of the veterans developments focus primarily on homeless households. And so this is somewhat unique, and about half or more than half of the units were for just hardworking veterans and their families. As mentioned, the design was mostly completed when we bought the property, and so we maintained the high-end Spanish style design, and the property, as you can tell, looks like high-end and expensive condos. So it really looks wonderful. In the central building, which you can kind of see up on the slide, that's where we added the community rooms and offices, which look and open onto the beautiful central courtyard. You know, the courtyard has a built-in barbecue and picnic area, a tot lot and open space to play for the kids and for the adults to relax. There's also a community garden that we added with a composting area and a gorgeous mural painted by Muralism and community volunteers, including a gold and purple spotted fish that you can see in the photo on the bottom right that I helped masterfully paint. I'm just kidding. I'm not really a great painter, but it was a lot of fun, and it was a great day for all the community volunteers to come out and have something that's lasting and beneficial for our residents. The property is also very energy and water efficient and is Green Point rated. You know, energy efficiency and water efficiency is very important to the work we do. We are also working currently now, you know, a year or two later, about adding solar panels through this SOMA, the Solar on a Multifamily Affordable Housing Rebate Program. That can't be used during construction. I'm not really 100% sure why, but when we designed the property, we made sure it was solar ready so we can utilize that rebate program like we are doing now. Next slide. So, you know, everything is going great with the development, with the design, the funding. You know, in late 2017, we had all funding committed, except for our tax credits and our tax-exempt bonds. These were non-competitive at the time, so you know, remember those good old days. So we basically had all of our funding committed. However, in late December, the tax of 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed, which lowered the corporate tax rates and therefore the demand from tax credit investors. Almost overnight, we had over $1 million funding gap, 5% of the total project budget. You know, we are frantically exploring our options, and we want this session to be somewhat interactive. So we're going to do a quick poll to see how you would fill this funding gap. You can see a couple of the different options, obviously not an exhaustive list, but these are a few of the things that we thought about initially. So let's give you guys a second to fill that out. And while we're waiting, you know, I'll give you kind of the spoiler alert. You know, the way that we actually tackled this particular issue was to go after the Veterans Housing and Homeless Prevention Program funding, also known as VIP, you know, from the state. You know, there just happened to be a VIP NOFA out. Unfortunately, it was due in about a month's time, which is very, very quick for those of you who have done these funding applications. Plus, we are working on a veterans development in Los Angeles and a potential veterans development in a nearby city. So as Derek mentioned, we were already working very closely with the veterans community, and the site was close to the Port Hueneme Naval Base, which made it additionally attractive, and we had a lot of supports from the base and the veterans community. You know, while Many Mansions is a services provider and a property management company, we did not have the required veterans experience for the VIP application. So we had to scramble to find partners to help us meet these requirements. Yeah, so it looks like most of you did kind of what we did, look for other funding, VIP. That was the most common response. You know, fortunately, we were already partnering with LA Family Housing on a veterans development in Sylmar. And they were amazing. You know, they agreed to be the services provider and our partner. And through tremendous effort on both of our parts, we completed the VIP application in 3 weeks' time. And again, for those of you who've done these state funding applications, that is a tremendous undertaking. And the services plan for that funding application is quite extensive. So we really appreciate all that LA Family Housing did to make that happen. And as Derek mentioned, also the John Stewart Company, with whom we had a prior relationship, agreed to be the supervisory management agent, basically just making sure that we're accomplishing everything that the state wants, while Many Mansions is the day-to-day property management company. Next slide. So as you can see, we have 8 different funding sources, which unfortunately is not uncommon and adds a lot of complexity, time, and cost to the development of affordable housing. But it is great to have so many available options. You know, we already talked about the VIP funding from the state and alluded to the 4% tax credits and tax-exempt bonds, which we did eventually secure. But we also received an award of AHP funding, or Affordable Housing Program funding, with Union Bank as our member bank. via the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco. So we're grateful for that. In addition, we use 2 different home funding sources, one from the city of Oxnard and one from the county of Ventura. Now it's not typical to get, and obviously these weren't the same units. You can't overlap units. But this is not typical, due to the proximity to Port Hueneme, which is a participating jurisdiction of the county, and the homeless population that we are serving. The county stepped up and supported this important project via home and CDBG funding. We also got a sizable grant from the Home Depot Foundation. Usually grants provide some money for these projects, but nothing in the magnitude that the Home Depot Foundation provided here, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you've ever wondered what tens of thousands of dollars in Home Depot gift cards looks like, it is as glorious as you think. Myself and Derek, I remember being in our office holding just a big pile of Home Depot gift cards that we ultimately provided to the contractor to buy resources and materials for the project. And it was all accounted for and everything. Fortunately, we had all of this funding support, as Louise will now talk about a few of the challenges that we faced during the construction process. Louise?
Thank you, Alex, and good morning, everyone. So the construction phase is the fun part of the development process, but of course, we come into some obstacles, and so these were some of the challenges that we faced during construction. The first was the high water table and unstable soils. And so as you can see in the picture, we are in close proximity to the ocean, and as such, we had a high water table, historically high water table. When we completed our soils exploration, it was lower, and we were in the middle of a drought. And when we started construction about 3 years later, the water table had changed. So that, in combination with the heavy equipment rolling over, resulted in unstable soils. It acted as a sponge. And so in order to stabilize the soils, we had to install a rock base layer and a geogrid to about 80% of the entire site. And that came with about $150,000 change order, which was a substantial chunk of our hard cost contingency. And again, it was at a grading, so at the beginning of construction. So just for future reference, we're implementing a policy where we reevaluate whether we need to explore the soils right before going out to GC bids, to bidding, in order to mitigate potentially having that added cost. The other issue that the challenge that we ran into was Southern California Edison, the point of connection. And so the way it was designed, we were going to be connecting to a transformer that was located just across Savers Road, about 100, 150 feet away from the project. However, the existing transformer was located on private property. The developer who installed it about 15 years prior deeded that portion of the property to the city of Oxnard, so the city was the owner, and ultimately that required an easement in order for us to connect to that transformer. And so the city required some negotiation between the city of Oxnard and Edison executives, which proved to be a lengthy discussion. At one point, it appeared that it wasn't going to happen, so we explored alternative modes or alternative points of connection across the alley and across the road up to the south, which is the road and is in fact a highway, so that in itself presented additional challenges. So fortunately, the city and Edison were able to come to terms, and we were able to proceed with the initial design. It did cost the project it did have some cost to the project in that we had to bring in temporary generators for a couple of months so that we would not delay construction. And so just for future projects, and if you do need an easement, it could potentially take longer than anticipated. And then lastly, for those of you familiar with the VHHP program, you should know that there is a requirement that a certain percentage of your hard costs be awarded to a disabled veterans business enterprise. And while we recognize that the intent is wonderful, DVBEs are very limited and hard to come by. In our case, the contractor lacked the capacity to complete the prevailing wage requirement, monitoring requirements, and so it did cause a little bit of delay in order for us to receive our final compliance sign-off, and ultimately delayed our perm conversion a couple of months. Next slide. And so, of course, challenges, create learning opportunities for us. And so these are some of the few that we've decided to highlight. As Alex and Derek have mentioned, just having the strong joint venture partnerships is critical, and it was critical for the success of our project. We partnered with the small for-profit developer who was very familiar with the process in the city of Oxnard, as well as the Alley Family Housing and the John Stewart Company. And so just those partnerships are very critical to the success of the project. Next, just involving your asset, property management services, even getting your IT department involved is pretty critical. For example, one minor issue that we had was the CCTV, the camera placement. So you get different perspectives depending on the division that's reviewing it. So we've implemented a policy moving forward where we're coordinating with our different divisions in order to have a more successful project. Adaptability, so the importance of having a project and a backup plan is critical, as you know, in order to be able to face unforeseen challenges. As in this case, we had to change the population served, and it just made sense given our partnerships and the proximity to the base to pursue a veterans project. And then, as always, continuing to look for value engineering opportunities. In our case, we were able to finish the project with a small surplus. We were able to reinvest that surplus into the project in the form of a capitalized replacement and services reserve, as well as additional security features for the project. And then addressing neighborhood challenges. So the project is located next to a community that has some crime issues, and so we worked closely with the police department early on. We actually invited them to come take a tour of the property a couple of times, and they provided feedback on the security features that were in place. And so we continue to work with them in our property and asset management divisions and services in order to tackle any issues that may come up early on. And then lastly, for veterans project, just providing extra time for the lease up and permanent conversion is critical. For one reason or another, having the veteran population lease up takes an additional month or two to lease up, and so just ensuring that you have a little bit of cushion is critical, so as not to receive any negative adjusters in your tax credits. So just that was not necessarily the case for us. It's just something to be cognizant of. Next slide. So these challenges make the development process difficult and arduous, but at the end of the day, we do it, it's rewarding, and we do it for the people who will live in the properties. So here we have the story of Charles, who is a Vietnam veteran. He became homeless after his parents passed away, and the bank foreclosed on the home he lived in. And so he's a wonderful human being, and he epitomizes the struggles that many of our veterans face. So this is one story, one of many whose lives have been improved by the work that Many Mansions and the work that we as an industry do in order to combat our housing crisis. So with that, I'll pass it back to Derek for our concluding slides.
So thank you, Luis, and thank you, Alex, for talking about the challenges that we faced. And more importantly, we all know that it takes a village to get these projects done. Ormond Beach Villas is no different. As you can see on this slide, there's a lot of partners involved, a lot of services partners involved in the success of this development. And at this point, we wanted to take the opportunity and really just thank all of the partners who are involved in this development. And next slide, please. And at this point, I wanted to also acknowledge SCAMP for acknowledging and awarding Many Mansions as Developer of the Year last year, and acknowledging Ormond Beach Villas, this development, as the Beyond LA Project of the Year. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to Alex Russell, our Executive Vice President. I saw some chats and some questions pop up, so he will take us through those questions and answers. So Alex, back to you.
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, I answered a few of the questions. I'm not a particularly fast typer, so I'll answer the rest verbally. We did talk a little bit about the challenges with the lease up for veterans, both the homeless veterans and non-homeless veteran units. We did have challenges with both units, configurations and types. Actually, part of it was we did have a rental subsidy. We had 100% project-based Section 8 for this development, and several of the units also through the VIP had to go through our continuum of care as well. So coordinating between the city and the county and our property management, it posed some challenges at times, but everyone worked hard and the project successfully leased up. It did take, like I said, a little bit longer. We normally budget or assume about a 3-month lease up period and then another 3 months for stabilization when we're kind of underwriting our deals. For veterans developments, we've now started assuming about a 5-month lease up period. It doesn't necessarily take that long, but we're cognizant of the fact that we don't want to have a negative adjuster or have potential issues or deficits in our funding. So we just want to provide a little bit of capacity. As talking to our partners in the industry, we've heard that most veterans developments take a little bit longer just because it adds another nuance and layer. And I think part of it's that we're doing a great job as a industry on combating veterans homelessness. And so there isn't the same number of homeless veterans that we're seeing as we quite expected. As far as, can you elaborate on the additional future testing you are instituting to minimize unstable soils? Mainly it's just doing another soils test closer to the construction period. As Louise mentioned, we bought the property, we did extensive soils testing. We weren't really concerned about the water table. We had several feet of kind of wiggle room, if you will. And ultimately, it started raining a lot more, and but not so much that we were like, oh, it's monsoons and the water table is going to rise, but it was enough to make a difference. And when we actually went to construction, we were unpleasantly surprised to see the higher water table and had to take some remedial action to address it. So we just figured, if you're close to the ocean or maybe you have some other things that may lead to kind of the water table rising, just do another test closer, for the extra couple $1,000 to do that additional soils sampling. It could make sure that you don't have any surprises during the construction period. And obviously, Derek or Louise, if I miss something, please jump in. Yes, the project did cost around $500,000 a unit to build. Obviously, those numbers include deferred developer fees and the substantial reserves that all of our projects face, which somewhat I think maybe should be excluded when we're talking about the per unit project costs, as they're not necessarily, especially the deferred developer fee, a real development cost. Really, as you all in the industry know, you put those in just so you can get extra eligible basis for your tax credits. But really, it's just a semantic recategorization of cash flow, and it's an offsetting sources and use. So, but the project did cost around $500,000 per unit, but considering the soils and other things, we feel that that's a reasonable cost. Is the site near other neighborhood amenities such as grocery stores, parks? Yes, absolutely. It's actually really close to a park, a school, transit stop is within pretty close walking distance. Grocery store is about a half mile or so it's not like next door, but it's not too far. This is a suburban community. Ventura County is much more, it's a little bit further walking distance to many amenities, but overall this site was actually great location. Kind of already answered that with the lease up challenges. Is there parking on the premises for tenants? So yes. Actually, most of the units actually have enclosed garages, which is actually a unique feature that we don't typically include in most of our developments, but is great, especially with some of the neighborhood crime issues that Louise alluded to. We did convert some of the garages to two-car garages to one-car garages and some surface parking. So there is, we did not seek much of a parking reduction for affordable housing density bonus, just a few spaces. So the property is generally adequately parked, and as I mentioned, is fairly close to transportation. Is there any questions that I missed? I think, is there any questions that I missed, Derek, Louise? No? Oh, looks like there might be one more.
I think you've answered most of them.
With so many vet projects across SoCal, why are lease ups challenging? Again, each community is different. For this particular instance, when you have multiple parties, the city, the county, the property management company, all kind of going through the collaborative lease up process, it just adds a little bit of extra complexity. There is still a need for veterans housing for the homeless, but obviously each community is different. So you really need to do your market study. Work with the veterans community, do your market study, and make sure there is the adequate need in the community that you're working on. So that, do you only develop in Simi Valley? No, we develop in all of Ventura County and actually Los Angeles as well. We actually are working with LA Family Housing on another veterans development in Silmar that's about 2/3 of the way complete with construction. Another development for homeless families in Sun Valley, and another development for homeless households in Boyle Heights as a joint venture with Azure, a commercial developer. Many of the vets were local. Obviously, some come from outside the particular city, and maybe even a handful came from outside the primary market area. But by and large, most of our veteran residents came from Oxnard and the local community. And we're pretty much over time, so I don't know if Louis, Jeanette, if we should take additional questions or not. Okay, so I'll just do one last question since I'm here. You mentioned home funding. Were you able to explore other funding sources from the city or county? We did get 100% project-based Section 8. The Housing Authority for the city of Oxnard is also part of the city, but they don't have any more kind of redevelopment agency funds. So the funding that they primarily had was home funding. They have some in lieu fee funding that we've used for other projects, but again, it's not a tremendous amount. So with that, we will wrap it up to be respectful of everyone's time. We're so grateful for the opportunity to talk about Ormond Beach Villas, Derek and Louise and LA Family Housing, all the partners that Derek mentioned. We're so proud and grateful for the support. We're grateful for SCAMF and for basically the community that we have, the fact that we can learn from each other, the camaraderie we have. This is difficult work, and appreciate everyone taking the time to be here today. Thank you so much.